Hello, everyone. Hello, Disney fans of all ages. Hello, Alta fans of all ages, if that is a thing. I am so excited to welcome you to today's Alta Live. My name is Beth Spotswood. I work at Alta Journal. And today's Alta Live, we're going to talk about what is known universally as the happiest place on earth. We are in kind of celebration of Alta's issue 30, the Seven Wonders of California. Today, we're speaking with Dr. Andi Stein, who is an expert on all things Disney. Disneyland is Ed Leibowitz, an Alta contributor, wrote a wonderful article about Disneyland, which we consider one of the seven wonders of California in our current issue. Spoiler alert, we have way more than seven wonders of California in this issue, but please check it out. But today we're going to talk about Disneyland. And let me tell, before we dive in, let me tell you about Dr. Andi Stein. She is a professor at the Department of Communications at Cal State Fullerton, where she teaches courses about entertainment and tourism communication. She has a class called Deconstructing Disney, which examines the influence of the Walt Disney Company on entertainment and society. I mean, what better person could we have to tell us about Disneyland? Prior to becoming a professor, Andi was a journalist and public relations practitioner here where I am in the Bay Area. She is the author of Why We Love Disney, The Power of the Disney Brand, and Attracting Attention, Promotion, and Marketing for Tourism Attractions. She is also co-author of An Introduction to the Entertainment Industry and News Writing in a Multimedia World. She's got all sorts of very fancy degrees. I encourage you to look up her bio. She's fantastic, and I am honored that she is joining us today. Before we dive in to Disneyland or walk through the gates of the Magical Kingdom, I do want to let you know about Alta. Alta is a quarterly magazine and website focused on California and the West. So while Disney is global, we're going to focus on Disneyland and California today. Alta comes out, obviously, quarterly, January, April, July, and October. You can subscribe to us for $50 a year. You get 4 gorgeous issues of Alta, full access to our website and archives, as well as a special gift, which I think today's audience will love. It's a book collection of our first 5 years of cartoons. Yes, Alta features cartoons. We host free events like this. Alta Live is weekly, every Wednesday at 12:30, as well as the California Book Club, the third Thursday of the month. So there's my sales pitch. Please support us with a membership if you can. We would love to welcome you to the Alta community. Regardless, you're all welcome today, as everyone is welcome in Disneyland. Thank you so very much. Andi, I know that you have just landed from global travels. Where are you today?
Well, today I am in Buena Park, California. I'm about 15 minutes from Disneyland and not too far from Knott's Berry Farm.
Which is no Disneyland. I want to give our Alta regulars will know that you should let us know where you're zooming in from in the comments. It's great to see Azusa, California, Washington, D.C., Cambria, Burbank, close to Disneyland. I am in Northern California, in Novato, California, but have returned. Of course, I took my now 6-year-old to Disneyland for his first time this summer. Hi, New York City. So I figure let's just start with the basics, the lay of the Disneyland, as it were. Can you give us a brief kind of history of when did Disneyland come to be? How did it come to be? Let's start there.
Okay. Well, the story goes that Walt Disney had 2 daughters, Diane and Sharon, and on the weekends it would be Daddy's Day. He'd get to play with the girls, and he would usually take them to Griffith Park in Los Angeles. And he would sit on a bench in the park, and they would ride the carousel, and he would sit and watch them, and he would be bored out of his mind because he didn't have anything to do other than watch the girls on the carousel. And he started thinking, why is there no place where parents can go with their children and have the same exciting experience that they are? Because the amusement parks at the time in the United States, the amusement park industry was kind of fading. The parks had been really popular in the late 1800s, the early 1900s, but by the 40s and 50s, there wasn't a whole lot. They were kind of decrepit. They were falling apart. They weren't always safe. They weren't always clean. And so he got it in the idea in his head that maybe he should create an amusement park that would be family friendly and where the whole family could come and be entertained. And by then he was well known in the film industry. His characters were known all over the world. His stories were known. And so he decided he wanted to build what became a theme park that was based on all these stories and characters that he had created. And that was where the idea started for Disneyland.
Why
And
Anaheim? Why did he pick Anaheim?
he actually wanted the park to be closer to the Disney studio. So he was looking for land up in Burbank or Glendale and somewhere closer to the Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles area. And he couldn't find a space. He couldn't find a place to build it. And Orange County was just this sea of orange groves at the time. So there was lots of land down here. And so he was able to purchase land and then cleared out the orange groves and built Disneyland here.
So Disneyland, and what year was this? When
Um,
did kind of the plans begin and when
Plans
was the
began in
opening
like
day?
1953, 54, and then the park opened in 1955 on July 17th, 1955. Yeah,
Wow.
so it's going to be celebrating its 70th anniversary this year, and you can bet that the Disney company is going to do a huge celebration to commemorate that. Yeah.
I'm sure. I was, I mean, I am no Walt Disney expert, but I know that Walt Disney is originally from the Midwest. And when he was trying to become an animator, he could have moved to New York, where most people were going. He chose to go to LA, where his brother was recovering from an
Right.
illness.
Right. Yeah.
How do you, and I was kind of wondering, like, whoa, I wonder what California might look like had Walt Disney chosen to go to New York instead. Can
Yeah.
you
Well,
do you have any thoughts on that?
Hollywood was already established. That was part of the reason he came here was because he wanted to be a filmmaker and he was hoping to be a more, he was doing cartoons in Kansas City where he was working, but he really wanted to break into the film industry and it was starting to grow in Hollywood and his brother was here already, so that was a draw for him. But I was thinking it wouldn't necessarily be so much films that might be different, but certainly the theme park industry would be different because now we have the Universal Park in Universal Studios in Hollywood. There's SeaWorld in San Diego. There's Legoland at Escondido. I don't know that any of that would be here if it wasn't for Disneyland because that kind of set the ball rolling with the theme park industry.
How does and now Disneyland was the first, 1957, Disneyland opens. It
55.
oh, I'm sorry, 55. It's an instant hit.
Yeah, it was pretty much an instant hit. The first day was a little messy, but after that, millions
Why
of
was
people started coming.
why was the first day a little
Oh,
messy?
because the park wasn't quite finished yet, and so they had, people were sinking into the asphalt. The bathrooms weren't
No.
working. Yeah, there was all kinds of craziness going on, and they had TV coverage of it, live TV coverage of it, and so there were. If you watch some of the opening day of the coverage, you can see some. You can kind of tell they should have probably waited a few days to get it all together before they opened it up to the media and the public.
I'm very familiar with the deadline. Fastly approaching.
Right, exactly.
Um, so then when did Disney decide, oh, Disneyland's a hit, we should open one somewhere else? And how many other Disney parks are there? I know you've been to them all.
I have been to them all, yeah. So there are 12 Disney parks. When Disneyland was a hit, Walt Disney decided that he wanted to build something similar on the East Coast and chose Florida as the location and quietly bought up lots and lots of land in the Central Florida area under assumed names. So nobody would know that it was Walt Disney buying this land. So he was able to acquire 41 square miles of land in Central Florida before anybody figured out that this was Walt Disney, because otherwise the price would have been way more
Sure.
than he paid. Yeah. And so that was the original idea. And he had a much more elaborate scheme than let's just build a theme park. He wanted to build this whole community called the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, where people could live and work and shop and everything would be contained. And unfortunately, he died before he was able to build any of that. And so his brother, Roy, was the one who built the first theme park, which is now called the Magic Kingdom. But at the time, it was called Walt Disney World, and it opened in 1971.
Oh, I think of it as Disney World.
Yeah, Disney World is like the whole conglomerate, the whole resort, and there are four parks in Walt Disney World. And they renamed when they started building other parks. There's the Walt Disney World, Epcot,
Oh yeah.
or the Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Hollywood Studios, and Animal Kingdom. So those are the four parks in this giant Disney resort. And it's like a city unto itself. I was just there in January, in the second week in January, and I remember, looking around, seeing all this, and thinking, it's mind-boggling to envision that this all started with Walt Disney and his mouse and the one park that he built in California, and now it's like a whole city that exists in Florida, and then there are all the parks that are around the world as well. So
Where is the most? I know that there's Tokyo,
yeah, there are two
Paris.
parks. There are two parks in Tokyo. There are two parks in Paris. There's one in Shanghai, and there's one in Hong Kong. Those are the international parks, and then there are four in Florida and the two parks here.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize they were all considered different parks. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like I just thought of like Walt Disney World as all of it.
right, right. Yeah. So there are actually four separate parks in Florida under the Walt Disney World umbrella. Yeah.
Do these parks, is Disneyland, Anaheim's Disneyland, that blueprint for these parks in any ways? Are there certain components that that Disneyland kind of set the standard for that these 11 other parks throughout the world have to follow, or are they all their own independent organisms?
Yeah, I think there is, and there are most of them are Disneyland parks, but then some of them are other types of parks, like the Animal Kingdom Park, for example, is all about animal conservation. There's a park in Tokyo called Tokyo Disney Sea, and it's all about the famous waterways of the world. But the Disneyland parks all kind of have the same blueprint. They all have a main street going down. They all have something called Walt Disney called it a weenie, which is like something that draws you into the park. So the castles in the Disneyland parks are often like when you walk in and there it is looming in front of you.
Yeah.
Epcot, for example, when you walk in, there's an attraction called Spaceship Earth, which looks like a giant golf ball. And
Yeah.
that's what you'll see when you first walk in. When you walk into the Animal Kingdom part, there's this giant tree of life that has all these carved animals in it. That's really cool looking. And so every Disney park will have that. But then they all have rides. They all have shows. They'll have characters wandering around. When Disney California Adventure opened, which is the park that was built on Disneyland's parking lot, just right across the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the idea was this was going to be a tribute to California, and all the attractions would be California related, not Disney character related. And then people complained, it's like, where's Mickey Mouse? I came to see Donald Duck and he's not here. And so the company then had to start adding characters into the parks because people thought, well, something's wrong. This is a Disney park, but I don't see my favorite characters here.
Oh, interesting. When I was there this summer, it was very Avengers.
Yes, well, now
Yeah.
it is, yeah. But when it
Yeah.
was originally built, that was before all these other IPs were purchased. So,
I'm curious if in kind of the I realized that Disney had this wonderful animation studio in the 50s that was kind of blossoming and burgeoning, and then Disneyland opened. Do you think that Disneyland in any way helped the growth? What was the impact of Disneyland other than just, here's another way to make money, here's a place for people to take their in to experience this in real life, as it were. Um, it seems to me like Disneyland kind of helped the Disney brand explode on a larger scale. Can you talk a little bit about that?
it really did. It really cemented Walt Disney's place in entertainment history, I think, because he was known for the films, but the park made him famous everywhere. And part of that was because when the way that Disney was able to build the park was that he got funding from ABC, which was one of the four fledgling television networks that existed in the 1950s. And in exchange for the money that ABC gave to the building of the park, he was committed to do two television programs for ABC. One was the Mickey Mouse Club, and the other
Oh,
one was
yeah.
a weekly series called Disneyland. And that aired a year before, almost a year before the park opened. And every week, Walt Disney would come on television and he would talk about the construction of the park. So that by the time the park opened, people all over the country wanted to come to California to see this park. But that was also the first time that people really got to see Walt Disney himself and to experience him as a human being rather than just a name on the film. And so that did create much more awareness of Disney himself. And then that kind of kicked it off. And then the other thing that really sealed his place was the film Mary Poppins, which debuted in 1964, and
Oh.
that was a tremendous success as well. Yeah.
We're getting I still have more questions, but we're getting questions from the audience. Okay,
Oh,
what is their message? There's a message here about the Disney Institute. Um, is that a real thing?
there's a
Wait,
Disney
Disney Institute
History.
and Disney University.
Okay, so I know there's a Disney History Institute, which I think is online, but I'm not sure.
M-
Disney,
Marilyn, if you have links, pop them in the
yeah,
chat
yeah.
and
Um,
let us know. I've never heard of the Disney Institute and Disney University.
I've heard of Disney History Institute, and I think that's an online site. Disney University is a program that the company offers with courses that people can take from different corporations to, to like learn the Disney way of customer service and things like that.
Got it. Let's see. Lynn mentioned Andi, mentioned a goal to build community. Could you speak to the creation and ultimately deterioration of Celebration Florida? What's Celebration
Yeah.
Florida?
So Celebration was a housing community again, Walt's original idea for what he was going to build in Florida was that there would be a community where people could live, and then there would be parks where people could go for fun, and then there would be kind of like a World's Fair that you could see things from different countries around the world. And then, as I said, he died before any of that could come to fruition. So what happened was his brother built Walt Disney World, which is now called the Magic Kingdom. Later, Epcot was built, which kind of uses that whole World's Fair concept with the way that it has these different lands that represent different countries around the world. And then a housing community called Celebration was built, which was a planned community that was owned by Disney, and people could buy into it, kind of like a condo complex almost. And I don't know how long it lasted, but it eventually Disney sold off bits and pieces of it. And so that never really took off. But if you really wanted to live near Disney World, that was what you could do. You could buy that, and then you'd be right there. It was very close to the property, and you could go to theme parks all the time if you wanted to. So,
I want to bring us back to Disneyland proper. My biggest question, we did an article years ago in Alta on the feral cats of Disneyland,
oh,
which my wonderful colleague, our associate editor Liz is keeping notes here, and we're going to send links. This will be recorded and sent to all of you, including links, and we will send you links to our article about the feral cats of Disneyland, which I was shocked to learn about. What's something else we might be surprised that we don't know about Disneyland that might surprise us?
something else that might surprise us. Let me think about this.
I mean, there's all sorts of lore about Disneyland, like the characters aren't allowed to take their is it true that, like, no matter what happens, they could be dying, vomiting, passing out? Mickey Mouse cannot take off his Mickey head no matter what happens.
Yeah, there are enough places where the characters can then go behind stage or backstage, I guess it's called, so that they can stay in character and not be vomiting on the street. Yeah. So, but then they also, they do a good job of trying rotating people in and out. So somebody who's in a costume is not out there for a very long time, so they're not likely to pass out in the street. But I think one of the hallmarks of Disneyland is they do try and keep everyone in the show. It's at other parks let me see if I can rephrase this. If you're in Fantasyland, for example, you're dressed in a certain way to be in Fantasyland. You're not you're not going to be wearing a Frontierland costume, for example.
Okay.
So it looks like you're in the world that you're in at the moment. And so they call them cast members instead of employees. They call us guests instead of, just people off the street. And so they have this whole formula for making this look like a theatrical production. And that's been like that since the very beginning. And things have changed over time, of course, but I think the company still tries very hard to maintain this idea of this is the show. You walk into our world and you're in our world. You're not in the regular world. And you get immersed into Disney culture and immersed into the magical world of the happiest place on earth, as opposed to just spending a day in an amusement park, so that you can kind of put reality behind you. I mean, that's one of the reasons I love to go to Disneyland or any Disney theme park, because when I walk through the gate, I'm not thinking about work. I'm not thinking about paying bills. I'm not thinking about whatever stressors I have. I'm thinking about how long is it going to take me to get on my favorite ride, and what am I going to have
Right.
for lunch, and what are they selling today in the shops that I can look at and ooh and ah over. You get immersed in this world of fantasy for a few hours, or in some cases a few days, or if you're doing this as a family vacation. And it does make you feel good. It makes you feel all warm and fuzzy and happy, and then you walk out and you go home and you deal with your regular life.
And then you pay the extraordinary bills that it costs to go to
Exactly. Right.
Disneyland.
Right. Yeah.
Question from the Q&A was from Dejer. Oh, hi, Dejer. Was Walt inspired at all by the Huntington Library? It has separate countries based on plants and buildings. Was that near Pasadena's famed Huntington Library any type of inspiration for Walt Disney in creating his theme parks?
That part I do not know. I actually am a member of the Huntington Library. I love the Huntington Library. It's a great place to go walk around. But I don't know. I know he was inspired by Tivoli Gardens, which is in Copenhagen.
Yes.
And that is an amusement park that has lots and lots of vegetation, beautiful flowers, and nicely landscaped. And it also has rides and attractions. And I do know he visited that, and that was one of the inspirations for Disneyland. But I have not heard Huntington Gardens, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not true. Yeah.
Lynn has a question. We're getting dark here, dark and Disney. There's
Ooh.
lore about people going to Disneyland to take their own lives. Is there any truth to that you know of?
I have no idea on that one. Wow, that is dark.
Interesting. That is dark. Ed asks, it's a pretty expensive outing for families these days. Has it become more expensive over time compared to the affordability in earlier days?
Oh, absolutely. I'll give you an example. So when I moved to Southern California, I had just finished graduate school, and three of my friends chipped in as a graduation present, and they bought me an annual pass to Disneyland. They bought me the top level annual pass to Disney because they knew I was going to be living right near there. And the three of them paid $199 for my top level pass that was good for 365 days a year, and it included parking.
Oh,
That same pass now costs $1,749,
get out.
25 years later. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. Yeah.
And isn't there a club inside of Disneyland, like a really exclusive club that someone can join where you're a member of that? There's a number to it, I
Yeah,
think.
it's called Club 33, and you have to have lots of money to be able to join it and to be part of it. And I am not a member of that.
What is the point of Club 33? What is the
I
Disney
think, again, the
magic behind it?
exclusivity, it's got a restaurant, and you can watch some of the shows, the night shows from there. And I think, just again, it's the prestige of being able to say, yes, I belong to Club 33. I have been in the lounge. I have been taken there to sit in the lounge, but I have not been able to afford to join. So
I mean, it's like tens of
I never
thousands of
will
dollars.
be. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
and apparently memberships are like never apparently available.
Oh,
Who
okay.
knows?
So it's just as well.
Um, I've never attempted, but who knows? I'm curious, there are also themed days. We also did a report on an LGBTQ plus day at Disneyland. I understand there are different kinds of themed days. When did that come about? And what is that? How is that kind of connected to the evolution of Disney culture?
I honestly don't know the answer to that. Yeah, I don't know when all of this started.
But
But
there's like, I know that there's LG Gay Day or LGBT.
AJ, right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Are there
And they're also
others?
now they do a lot of events. I mean, I think they've learned that they can do these after hours events. Star Wars is one of them. Valentine's Day, they'll do. I'm trying to think of some of the other. Oh, Halloween. Halloween's a big one where they'll sell separate admission to these events after hours. So they might close the park early, and then you've bought this event pass for October 27th to go do the Halloween event, and that might be another $100 or so on top of what you've paid to go into the park. Maybe
Oh, geez.
yeah. So I mean, a lot of it is they figured out, oh, we can capitalize on this. People are willing to pay it. And what's amazing is that they all sell out. That's what's so funny about the cost of Disney, not only Disneyland, but all these Disney parks, is that people complain, oh, it's so expensive, but then they pay the money and they go. So I think as long as people are willing to pay the money, Disney will continue to raise its prices.
I mean, that actually makes sense. And it's interesting in talking about this. I didn't think of it at the time, but I kind of felt as a parent a responsibility. My parents took me to Disneyland when I was a little girl. I felt a responsibility to take my child to Disneyland. I'd say, have you ever been to Disneyland? I mean, we're in California. What's our excuse for not getting there? I'm curious is as our I know and lots of people have lots of questions as our time runs down. Um, in in the realm of Disney, which since Walt Disney's days has gotten gigantic, how big are the theme parks? How important to the Disney culture are these in real life places that people can go to the Star Wars universe? And I don't know if they own Avengers or whatever, they seem to.
Marvel, yeah, they
Um, the princesses, all of the other kind of Disney components that they have. How important in terms of Disney's cultural impact are these in real life places?
I think if you're a fan of Star Wars or Marvel or Pixar or any of these different properties that Disney has purchased, it's very important to be able to have that experience where you can interact with the characters and go on attractions that relate to the characters. I mean, I'm not a big Marvel fan, and yet the Spider-Man ride that's in the Avengers campus is really awesome. When I went on and I thought, boy, they did a great job with this. And so I think depending on what kind of entertainment you might follow or your children might follow, having that real life connection does make a big difference. That these characters have jumped off the page of the comic book or jumped out of the movie screen, and there they are standing in front of you, and you can go on a ride that's celebrating them. And I think people love to be able to do that.
You've written a lot about Walt Disney and his history, and his kind of journey. What do you think he would think about present day as considering he died before the completion even of Disney World or the Magical Kingdom and beyond? What do you think he would think about kind of that initial sitting on that park bench in Griffith Park, kind of coming up with the original idea of Disneyland versus its kind of global
Yeah,
presence now?
I think he would be blown away, but I think he'd be really, really proud as well. Because again, he was somebody who was always looking forward, always looking to the future, always looking to what's the next innovative thing that we can do. He did that with his films. He certainly did it with the theme park. And I think a lot of people who are upset with all the different things that the company has purchased, understandably, they say this is not Walt's park, but Walt was all about innovation and technology, and Walt himself might be really pleased that the park has grown into what it has and that the company has grown into what it has. And as he said, it all started with a mouse, and really it all started with Walt Disney and the vision that he had for this entertainment powerhouse that the Walt Disney Company has become.
Okay, last question. It's a two-parter, and I would be remiss if I did not ask.
Okay.
What is your favorite Disney movie, and what is your favorite ride at Disneyland?
Okay, so my favorite Disney movie is Mary Poppins. I mean, she is practically perfect in every way. If you can see behind me, there's a Mary Poppins doll standing on the credenza there. And my favorite ride is Peter Pan's Flight at Disneyland, which I rarely get onto because the line is always so long to be able to get onto it. So my second favorite ride, which I can usually get onto pretty easily, is It's a Small World.
Oh,
If that's
why?
on in your head. Yeah. So
That's a great ride also because it's air conditioned and you
Mhm.
get to sit for
You
20
get to
minutes.
sit for 15 minutes. Yeah, right. So it's good.
Um, Dr. Andi Stein, Professor Andi Stein, thank you so, so very much for joining us to talk about Disneyland today. It's been so fun to get to learn about it, to get to hear your expertise on all things Disneyland. I know our audience has had a fabulous time. Folks, before you leave, I want to make sure to invite you to next week. We're going to welcome Blythe Robertson. She's going to talk about her article, Hunting in Montana. She is a vegan who went hunting and then ate her kills. She wrote about it for Alta, and she's going to share kind of that experience and talk about it with us. That's next week on February 19th at 12:30 here at Alta Live. Dr. Andi Stein, thank you so much, especially considering you've just landed from traveling the globe, for joining us today. It was an absolute delight to have you on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been great fun.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.